way. You younger ones did not, but that's all right. Yes, you are not as blessed as the rest of us. I am going to start with a brief biography of Ethel, and Kelly, who really knew Ethel Hirst because she lived with her, she grew up with her, really, with her there. She was your aunt, Ethel.
Yes,
and
exactly.
She is going to interrupt me when I say something wrong, and she is going to fill in with remarks at the end about her personality. The little sheets that I have handed out, we're not going to do yet, but don't lose them. You'll be in big trouble. I will be in big trouble. Ethel was born in the brick house on Stonehurst Road, now called Stonehurst Road. Then it was known as Paulus Crossing. There were two houses on the road. One was Carrie's house, the other was the Scribner house. They were both Scribner houses at one time. And Ethel was a Scribner, one of the old families in town, obviously. She was born in 1898, the daughter of Charles Palmer Scribner and Lila Ames. Charles Scribner was the adopted son of Silas Scribner, who was son of Captain William T. Scribner, who lived in your house. Is that right?
He lived in the brick house,
And
the original,
doctor.
that his son, his son, William Taylor Scribner, lived in our house.
Okay. Ethel had just one brother whose name was Guy, and he never married as far as I know. Okay, I want to comment on the date she was born. She was born in 1898. That doesn't sound like anything to anyone, but it happens to be the 100th anniversary of the town's incorporation. And she used to like to say, when the town is 200, I will be 100. She missed it by a few months. She died in 1997. She'd get the age of 99. She never quite made. How old was she?
She was 99. I don't remember. What's the date of her birthday?
March.
Yeah, I think it was.
It was close.
Yeah. So she almost got there. She's very close.
Anyway, Ethel grew up, as I said, spent most of her life in Otisfield. She wandered away now and then to work, but basically Otisfield was always home. That house was always home. She went to the first 8 grades at the one-room schoolhouse in East Otisfield, and then went to Oxford High School for the rest of her education. I must say, I will comment now that the Otisfield News, which she wrote every word of, does not sound to me like someone with just a high school education. Either she picked up an education elsewhere, or it was a very good education she got there. I was impressed. She made frequent allusions to Latin poets, for example. Her grammar was correct. She never made a mistake. Spelling was wonderful. It was smooth, maybe not literary, very literary, but it was good standard English, very well done. She graduated from high school in 1915 and married 2 years later to Almond Hirst. This was 2 years after she finished high school. He was a farmer, but mostly in restaurant work. They had one daughter named Jacqueline who lived most of her life in Florida, and one granddaughter. Almond Hirst, I don't know much about. Did he come from Otisfield County?
They're an Oxford family. He was a brother to, an uncle to Ina Nerney and Pearl Bunyan. They were both Hirsts, and they had a brother, John.
Okay, so she may have met him when she went to high school.
Very likely.
Very likely. During their work lives, she and her husband traveled around, particularly to Florida. She did a lot of jobs in the Flamingo Hotel in Miami Beach, off and on. So it was probably seasonal work. She worked at the Augusta House in Augusta, the Elm Hotel in Auburn. These don't mean anything to me, but they may to you. At Wentworth by the Sea, and close to home, Bean's Restaurant in South Paris.
She also worked at the Bethel Inn.
Okay.
I think she dragged my sister along with one of Anne's early jobs.
And what did she do? Was she a waitress or?
She waited on tables. She was a waitress. And Uncle Alvin, I call my mind Uncle Alvin because that's essentially who they became to be. But he was a butcher and could work in that department with meat cutting and so forth. So they always went together.
So he didn't wait on table, he was in the back?
No, he was usually in the kitchen.
Okay. Later in her life, I remember this vaguely, when she grew a little older, she probably needed an income. She supported herself by serving as a companion or chauffeur in home aid to the old folks around. According to one newspaper interview, when she was 90, she was still driving to she was a musical person. I don't know about her training. Do you know anything about musical training? I doubt she had very much. Priscilla can speak to this perhaps. Did you take over for her as organist of the Free Baptist Church?
I think so.
I think you did too.
And when she sat in the congregation, I always would go up and say hello to her. And I sat down and she says, well, I want to tell you, I am not singing hymns anymore. And I said,
as Priscilla's comment implies, she was quite outspoken and quite direct, and she said what she meant.
and I said, why? She said, because my voice sounds like an old frog. I said, oh, come on. Nope. She knew what she wanted to do.
Yes.
I can speak to when I was a teenager in the East Otisfield Free Baptist Church. She was the organist for the Norway Methodist Church, which no longer exists. But she used to drag me along with her quite often because she would insist that I had to do a duet with her with my violin and the pipe organ. That was quite a challenge, but we did pull it off.
And she liked to sing. I remember her singing.
She had a choir.
She had a good untrained voice.
Yeah, very good.
Not a very good voice.
Yeah, she had a
Yes,
very good. Very
Yeah,
strong.
apparently her whole family, the whole Scribner family was musical.
She could have just add to that. She really spent a great deal of time with music, and she had friends who would come up to the house, and they'd have evening soirees. They'd sing and play, and Jean Phillips is here. Eddie Phillips is her dad, and Eddie used to come.
Yeah,
Jean would come down and play with us.
too, that we used to go up and I remember a piano, so there must have been a piano up there or something.
Oh, yes.
She'd play and sing and,
Yeah.
you know, and just, oh, yeah. And she'd always feed us.
Eat,
some
yes.
food, yeah.
Okay, I'm moving on to community involvement. Ethel was one of those people who seems to volunteer for everything. We've always had them in Otisfield, thank heaven. She joined everything worth joining. According to the list in her obituary, she was a member of the East Otisfield Free Baptist Church, as I said, the Frederick Roby Grange, the Auxiliary of the American Legion, and the Otisfield Home Extension Group. She was also past president of the local PTA. And she was Ethel to an awful lot of people. I think perhaps even to me, although I married into the family, but because she was very close to my mother-in-law, Nellie Haynes, they were about the same age, they had grown up together. I became part of Ethel's family. Not as close as Callie is, by any means, but still, I think she considered me part of her property. And she helped me. Okay, and before she died, fortunately I did this. I went to her house one day and said, I want to know about the Otisfield News. I don't know, I never found out why she started writing a local newspaper. I have no idea why. I think maybe she had time on her hands. And I did need to find out a lot that I did not know. I got interested in it because in our shed chamber, we seem to have a couple of boxes of reject coffee. Some of those were in the back table. help yourself to a couple of samples if you'd like. These are reject copies which no one could throw away. We've also got a pretty complete set of all the issues for the 5 years that she edited the newspaper. And this is what I found out from talking to her. The Otisfield News came out every Thursday for those 5 years. She never missed a single issue. She was editor and reporter. It came out on Christmas Day, and Christmas Day fell on a Sunday. She never learned to type. And it was done, as you can see, on those awful stencils, those blue stencils that you had to punch holes through. And if you made a mistake, you had to kind of paint through the hole with a little... I'm not nostalgic about those. She couldn't type, so her brother died at the time, and he did a pretty good job. There were very few typos in that paper. The first few issues, we have them downstairs in the archives. If you want to go down to the archives after the meeting, I'd be glad to show you some of those. The first issues were done on carbon paper. And you can imagine what that was like, carbon paper. I don't know how many copies she did at first. They quickly switched to the stencil. She mailed it out to subscribers at the cost of 5 cents per issue. She went up to 6 cents later. Occasionally, the newspaper had advertisements. Somebody here is going to show, I think Ann is going to show off one of those ads, mostly from the East Otisfield General Store, but also from other places. She had correspondence. She had Lena Dyer on Scribner Hill. She had Ferd Loungeway someplace, I don't know quite where he was. She had someone in the Gore. She had someone in Bolster's Mills reporting to her. As I understand it, they would call her on the telephone. It must have been a very busy telephone. Particularly when it was a party line, it was 5. It must have been hectic. She would gather news by telephone, and every Thursday, out would come this 4-page paper packed with everything anyone would want to know about the town of 400 people. And we're going to read those items I gave you, or the content of that Otisfield News. I said, I don't know why she started the paper. I was very disappointed reading her obituary. It does not mention it. And I consider this a big accomplishment. What other small towns like Otisfield can brag about having a newspaper once a week devoted to Otisfield? As I said, the writing style and finished product suggest that her education in the local schools served her well. Occasionally it was sprinkled with Latin phrases and classical reference, but it is grammatically correct, it is self-confident, and it is witty. It's fun to read. She died at the age of 99. At her funeral, 3 of us, Ethel Turner, my husband Dave, and I, read a short appreciation of her newspaper career. And this is what we wrote. Ethel is no longer with us, but it is fortunate that the Historical Society has a smudgy but nearly complete set of the Otisfield News. Her great achievement as editor and writer was to make such a thorough record of the small details of rural life 50 years ago. Many of the people she wrote about have passed on. Much of the way of life she wrote about has now vanished. We can be grateful to Ethel for recording it so well. And now I am going, before we turn on to the audience participation part of the program, I'd like Callie to summarize and say something about her as a person.
Eugene?
Yes.
She used to write as the town reporter for the Advertiser Democrat for a while, too.
Oh, did she? I did not know that. Thank you.
She was the town reporter for a lot of years.
I suspect those are available in their archives if we chose to go after them.
What year
Janice? Maybe after this, after the newspaper?
Oh, yeah, yes, quite a
It was
while.
afterwards, you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, because I was a teenager, young adult.
Okay. Maybe she thought it was less work than what she already did.
And Ben Conant probably helped you find those because he's sort of an expert on the advertising.
Yep, that'd be worth doing.
Okay.
And how did she distribute those? Was the 5 cents a stamp? How did she distribute these? They were mailed.
They were mailed out. We had many with post, they were folded. They were, just one more word. When the Otisfield, when I joined the Otisfield Historical Society, I made everyone work. And one of the first jobs I made people do was sorting out the Otisfield news, the copies from my shed chamber. And we were not allowed to archive anything with a staple in it. So there were 5 or 6 of us women with very split fingernails and taking all those staples out. But that was our first project, and it's wonderful. We have the only complete set in the whole state of Maine. And the state archives has recognized that. They know we have a complete set. They never asked to look at it. And will you be able to do the number business? What do you want?
Sure, I can. We can help.
I want to go, I want to go to 29.
Okay, all right.
I'll go sit down.
I have to.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about a little more.
With fishes and a lot of water, I might get through this. I'm just recovering from awful cold. I remember, now, as you said, they were almost as much a part of our family as our own aunts and uncles, because we're just across. And those of you who know Stonehurst Road, we're just across this little driveway from each other. And they, Ethel was born in 98, you said?
98.
That was the year that our grandparents, the Pottles, bought the Scribner property, which now is ours. So they would indeed, Aunt Ethel would have grown up with Aunt Nellie and the Pottle children, because they were all peers.
About the same age.
Yeah. And she really kind of thought that we belonged to her, pretty much. And as you say, she was pretty definite about her, how she operated. She was a tiny, petite little woman, if you remember her. And the funniest thing I remember about that is she was delighted to see your husband David one time at church. And David was 6'5", and she came up to him, and the only thing she could reach was his leg. And she came up and hugged him around the thigh. And he was too much for you. So she was really diminutive. She was this very small person, but large in personality, I think. She had a very crisp personality, and I don't mean a negative crisp, but she was, this is what I think, and you knew exactly how you stood with Ethel Hirst. And I think she was very popular too. I think people liked her very much, and she tended to involve people like Janice, the young people around. She tried to encourage them to do things with her. Ethel Blow remembers, she was going to try to come tonight, but she wasn't home. And she remembers going off to one of the probably other organizations that you reported on, maybe the Legion, and a pack of them would go over for that, and very active in Grain. And she tended to involve us as well in things, and particularly because she was the eldest. So she went to Bethel Inn with Uncle Elman and Aunt Ethel when they went, because our parents were comfortable that she was going to be safe and secure with Aunt Ethel and Uncle Elman. She was a savior at times at the house. I remember I, without being noticed, climbed up behind my dad and got on the back of his tractor, which was hauling a disc harrow. And he didn't know I had done it, and my mother just happened to come out as he started the tractor, and I went poof between the disc harrow and the tractor. My mother screamed bloody murder, and Aunt Ethel came right down to see what was going on, wanted me up, took me home, and my parents about fainted, I'm sure. What could have happened if they pulled the disc harrow over that little body. So she was always patched my brother up when he fell and hit his head, and the Model T, and blood gushes, and he remembers at 3, her coming to get him in the old basin that he dripped blood into. I got a little dramatic memory, but so she was, she was part of the tribe up there. And as I say, I think popular, friendly. She treated us as she would have her own children. Jackie had been gone for several years. She was quite a lot older than we. So she had 3 more to worry about. And if we were being obnoxious or stealing the cookie or anything like that, she would straighten us right out. And we could go. I remember once I was a little jealous because she gave my brother a nickel for something he'd done. And she said, now Aunt Ethel wants you to have this. And I piped up and said, you aren't really Aunt. And it was a nasty thing to say. But I was, I guess, jealous. And I thought, hey, I got a nickel too, but I didn't get one. And she said, after this, you may call me Mrs. Hirst, and you may go home. I was strict. I was just strict. And Sunday morning was the following Monday morning, and my mother, being somewhat crafty, said, I need you to go up and tell Aunt Ethel, blah, 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 whatever. And I was horrified. I didn't think I could do that. But I went up, and she said, oh, how are you this morning, dear? Aunt Ethel loves you so. And, you know, she just, it was all flash in the pan, and that was it. I said what I had to say, and that's it. That's all there is to it. And she and Uncle Elmer were quite a pair. They both worked very hard. I remember years they planted green beans for the canneries. I think probably it was the Jilton cannery was the last one left, wasn't it? And they planted green beans, and all 3 of us would work picking beans for them, you know. So they, you know, when you say perhaps she had time on her hands, I don't think she did much. And they had a little farm early on. They had a Jersey bull, which scared everybody to death. And they had, you know, a small number of cattle, just like most people did for milk and cheese and butter and whatever. So they did all those little local small farm tasks, as well as got involved locally. And it was, we always knew when news was being collected, so she usually started with us. So we always could count on having a fair amount of presence in the news. And then she I think she actually went around to see people some too. But she was just, she was a force to be reckoned with, and it was really, I think we all felt her loss when she was gone. But this thing about taking care of elderly people, they were older than she, and she was very competent at that point in her life. Even though she was very elderly, she walked right along like a spry person, and she took care of business and, you know, could do their grocery shopping and cook for them and clean for them. It wasn't light work necessarily. It wasn't just being in the house. She actually took care of them. So she was really rather remarkable. She did end up having the golden-headed cane too, for a few years before she died. And I don't know, Ann, do you have anything to add to? She was just to us. She was just our Aunt Ethel.
Yeah, I think you've covered it pretty well here. My sin with the cookie, I can relate to that. I went up and Aunt Ethel had made cookies, and they were cooling, you know, kind of on a windowsill, and I have to say I snagged one. Went home with it, ate it, and Mom said to us, what are you eating? Cookie? Where'd you get it? Take it back. No, and apologize. So I had to go up hand in hand, or cookie in hand, as kids was, and apologize for my sin.
She was very forgiving. She was, I don't know that there's much more to say for me about her personality. It was just,
Okay, let me move to the next.
Yeah.
Without further ado, let me explain what we're going to do. Most of you have at least one slip of paper. And this is sort of like a lotto game. When Callie calls on you and gives you the number that's on your piece of paper, we would very much appreciate it if you would stand up, look at the camera or look at somebody, and read the date and read what's on your slip of paper. It is a genuine item from the Otisfield News. And then sit down. That's important too.
a little bit like I know.
And we will have a brief reaction if anyone wants to comment on briefly. And then we will move on to item number 2 and so forth and so on until we get to 28 passed out. So we'll stop when we get to
what number I want? How about number 1? May 29th, 1947. Howard Dyer has his corn planted. What was the date? May 29th, 1947.
Important news.
Yeah, important date. It's about right on, I would guess. Number 2.
This is dated June 10th, 1948. Full-page ad for annual Otisfield Community Hall party for super dance, orchestra, music, games, and luncheon. The hall needs a new roof, furnace and doors. The work will be done free if we all can get the money to buy the material. And here's a copy.
No. That's the ad.
That's the ad.
Number 3.
January 16, 1947, the third finger of the left hand was selected for the wedding and engagement rings because ancient people believed a vein from that finger ran directly to the heart.
Anybody ever hear that?
Yeah.
Some people have. I never have. People said they had. Number 4.
Madeline Lamb, September 11th, 1947. Madeline Lamb is attending Edward Little High School in Auburn. Ellen Gilson also attends Edward Little. Students attending Bridgeton Academy are Richard Dyer, Gordon Knight, Kenneth Blossom Jr., Olive Knight, Calvin Caro, Marion Jackson, and Glenn Henry's daughter. Gordon Pico goes to high school. Janet Bean is attending Gold's Academy. And as a resident of Otisfield, I actually know half of these people.
For those of you who may not know, I'm sure most of you do, Otisfield didn't have a high school, never did. And so the policy was that children from Otisfield could choose a high school to attend. And then the state money, or that's what happened then, went there. And so we were scattered all over the area. Number 6.
July 2nd, 1945. The Hankins family were busy over the weekend at their farm. Tommy and John David planted quarter-acre beans with a parish shop.
With a what? Oh. Jean?
I would like to comment on
I
that.
skipped 5, I'll come back.
I would like to comment on that. It wasn't a happy day because Burnham and Morrow came to pick up the beans several days after they had put them on the porch to dry out, and they dried out. And I think the 2 boys made something like $25 for their whole awful hot summer's work. It was not a happy day.
$25 is a lot of money. Now let's go back to number 5. I skipped someone.
You skipped your cousin.
Oh, that's okay then. It's July 24th, 1947, and it's written by a reader. Of course, we always know the stone walls were grayer, the sunshine brighter, and the apples bigger down in Dunkertown. It must have been a much larger place sometime because it has highways and byways and discontinued streets. It is very easy to write about something one doesn't know heck about, but in our imagination we can think of the old Dunkerites as walking the pleasant streets of Dunkertown in their bell-crowned hats, tucked up pantaloons and buckled shoes. You see, they had a Dunkerite church down there. The Dunkerite church is the old established church of the Pennsylvania Dutch, and they are very sure they are God's chosen people. We would hardly expect to find a Dunkerite church up here in the wilds of Maine, but is it, or is it not? Or did the church take its name from the place of the settlement, or did the church take its name from the place, or the settlement take its name from the church? You say, men have been hanged on less evidence. We wish that we might have kept the old church. It seemed to be the finishing touch to Dunkertown. Each town should have its historian as well as its treasurer. If not, the past waves its hand from the doorway and memory closes the day.
Number 7, 8.
Somebody says
7.
You're on 7.
Okay, 7. This is June 2nd, 1949, Otisfield, Gore. Harlan and Milton Johnson hung a May basket to Fanny and Ruby Green Tuesday night. Then they got their mother and Ruby and Marion Green to go with them to hang a basket to Madeline Brett. Remember the hang a May basket days? What a good time we had. Really fun, and it was really fun to have it hung on you. Our grandparents, strong grandparents used to hang baskets on Richmond. Very exciting. Number 8.
July 5th, 1945. Mrs. Carl Frickett was home Sunday after Campoweed.
Lisa's grandmother, not going astray. Number 9.
This is in June 7, 1945, at Bolster's Mills. The rag man was through the place Monday picking up all the rags and papers, etc.
Are we on number 10?
June 2nd, 1949, Ferdinand Loungeway comments. The Soviet squeeze, which covers all and satellites, is being gradually tightened on all Christian sects. One of our senators is introducing a bill just for bringing it before the people. A bill to buy a one-way ticket for any communist to the land of his ideal Russia, with a proviso that he was never to be allowed to land back here.
How about our relationship with Russia? Goes on and on and on. What were we, back to the rags, what were we collecting rags for? Was that a war effort? Well, it was 49.
This is 45.
45.
It could be.
Because we collected tin foil, remember?
Anything metal.
Yeah.
Grease, fat,
Yeah.
rags, bones.
Oh.
Bones. We had
All right, number 11.
July 14th, 1945, FJ comments. I'm thinking that's very long way as the library as well. With so many psychologists in town, we should benefit when they so clearly explain how low many of us rate.
Didn't know. How low we rate. Well, but we had a newspaper. Yeah. Number 12.
June 24th, 1948. The Culberts went to the pictures at Norway Monday night. The Dyers visited Mrs. Nancy Kemp at Portland Sunday evening. The Scribner Hill fishermen, Howard Dyer and John Loungeway, are busy once more. And Will Cox was a weekend guest at June and Jean Wiley.
Number 13.
July 24th, 1947, South Otisfield. Counselors at Camp Truda attended the Fireman Carnival at the fairgrounds several evenings. They enjoyed the fun and came home with several souvenirs.
Several souvenirs. That was the day where we had all these wonderful camps here, full of young people, and they did get engaged in town activities. It came wild and fair and various things. It was wonderful. Are we at 14?
January 22nd, 1948, Otisfield Goer. Fanny Green helped Charles Thurl butcher one day recently.
Pretty much everybody did their own butchering. 15.
September 18th, 1947, Otisfield Grange met Saturday evening. Guests were present from Crooked River and Deering Ranges. Plans were made to meet with the Juvenile Grange Friday evening, September 26th, and on the evening of Saturday the 27th, the subordinate Grange will be host to Casco, Crooked River, and Frederick Roby Granges.
How many people here participated in Grange? Well, I know when Uncle Alvin took Ann.
That was a big deal.
What did they call it, juvenile range?
Or, I can't remember it that way.
I think so, yeah.
What was subordinate?
It's just great. I don't know what subordinate was.
That just triggered another memory, because Ethel dragged me to Grange meetings, to play we played my violin there too.
Yeah.
And the last place I remember going with her was Sabbath Day Lake Grange, there at the head of the lake.
Yeah. That was a great deal the way she was. She really wanted to be out doing things and she wanted to engage people, I think. How about number 16?
It's January 16, 1947. Mabel Pico was rejoicing over clean furnace pipes. Lindley Pico and Morris Whitcomb cleaned them Wednesday.
This is sounding more and more like the texting and tweeting that we've
As I said, this was the social media. But wasn't that so typical of how people got things done? I think particularly people who weren't able to do it themselves, like maybe people probably weren't going to clean their pipes and stuff. And people just showed up to do it, took care of it. That's how it worked.
Didn't she live on Pico Hill at one time? Didn't they lose their house to fire?
They did live on
Maybe
Pico.
she would have been rejoicing
Yeah.
because.
Yeah, she lived in the little bungalow where Damon's lived now.
Yes, yes. But before that, she lived in two different places.
Yes. 17.
September 11th, 1947, Lydia S. Spur. Mrs. Lydia Spur died at her home Friday morning, August 29th, as a result of a cerebral hemorrhage suffered August 23rd. She was born in Otisfield, August 20th, 1852, the daughter of John and Sarah Lamb Scribner. She married Llewellyn Spur in February 1882. Mrs. Spur has always been a resident of Otisfield. Since her husband's death in 1920, she has spent nearly every winter in Florida. Mrs. Spur's unusual memory made her a mine of information for all seeking historical events. Her only survivor is her only son, William Spur, of this town.
Looks like apples didn't fall far from the tree in terms of their historical interest and collections and what have you. Number 19? 18. I can't do this.
April 15th, 1945. Let's get acquainted. Greetings to the Eastman Bean household. Eastman Bean is the oldest son of Lewis Bean. He is a good neighbor and is always ready to give a helping hand. His hobby is antiques. Olga Chase Bean is a charming person, loves children, is a competent teacher, and is teaching the East Otisfield School. Barbara Bean, the eldest daughter, is an attractive blonde. Is a student at Oxford High School. She spends her leisure time with her scrapbooks. Tricia Bean is a delightful young miss, is a pupil in the town school, and is interested in all kinds of sports.
And they live right down the little house just past our turn, the little white cake there.
And Olga taught almost everyone in town to read.
Yes. Yes. How many people learn to read from Olga Bean?
Dick and Jane.
Yes.
All G we call it.
Oh, Bink and I and Ann used to go down and visit them too. And I remember one time my brother really showed up down there with a package of frozen raspberries. Just go children and thieves. And we'd obviously got them out of our freezer, but we didn't think Mom would want us to eat a whole package of raspberries, so we went down and Mrs. Bean, if she had a dish. At the school, and she gave us our raspberries. Laughed a bit. It was good.
And how many of you learned from her? If you had nothing else to do, you did this.
Yeah. She was terrific. Number 19.
July 5th, 1945, Spurs Corner. F. J. McAuliffe has a pear tree with pears 2/3 of an inch through. and at the same time, blossoms on the new branches. And just by coincidence, F.J. McAuliffe was my grandfather.
How appropriate you got that one. It wasn't my design. Number 20.
December 20th, 1945, Otisfield Gore. Lester Thomas is harvesting his ice with his big truck from South Paris.
Nice, it's hard work.
How many of us had ice boxes?
21.
January 23rd, 1948, the Otisfield Telephone Exchange was moved into the home of Mr. and Mrs. David Bean Wednesday and Thursday of last week. May 20th, 1948, FJ's Corner. This extension of both electric lights and phones makes it so much better for our town in view of summer visitors as well as for home consumption.
Beginning of the telephone. And I think Betty Goss went down there for a while after that, and several other telephone operators. I always thought that would be a really cool thing to do when you grew up. You could pull the little pegs out, stick them on the wall. Just seemed kind of cool. Okay, number 22.
June 10th, 1948, Otisfield Gore. Mr. and Mrs. Oral Linnell spent Saturday evening with Mr. and Mrs. Lester Thomas playing cards.
Number 23.
May 3rd, 1946, Bolsters Mills. Newsflash. Percy Grover was on a maternity case Tuesday night. Ellis Ahonen's cow gave birth to a calf.
What was Percy Grover doing with a church? Wasn't Percy Grover our road commissioner for a while? Very big fellow. I remember. 23. Oh, wasn't it? Check it off. 24.
July 24th, 1947, Scribner Hill notes. Ralph Lamb's blueberry pasture is open. You can pick for 10 cents a quart. See Miss Rita Lamb.
Anybody remember that being a blueberry field and you could go there? You do? Yeah. And Rita Lamb at that point would have probably been across the road in the store, so you could have access to her. Okay, 25.
July 8th, 1948, Mr. and Mrs. Henry Hamilton have purchased the house lot from Ralph and Dorothy Lamb at the Four Corners near the Honor Roll.
And that's where the blueberry field was. My grandfather bought that from him.
On the corner?
All that land, we used to call it, that was a pasture when I was a kid. It was called a pasture, and that's where the blueberry field was. And Ralph Lamb owned that. My grandfather bought it from him.
And then it was your folks that moved the little schoolhouse, the Jackson Brook Schoolhouse, onto that property as the beginning of their house where you grew up.
Yeah. Picking blueberries.
Picking.
One way to buy a pair of jeans.
Yeah, yeah. 26.
December 5th, 1947. The Spurs Corner store now has a public telephone pay station, which is being patronized and certainly is a convenience for anyone. Next week, those in the neighborhood will have their applied for phones installed.
Wow. How did that work? That wasn't really a put your coin type pay station, was it? It was, you could pay to use the phone? I don't know.
I don't know, I know on the walls they have a pay station.
I don't
see tinier.
Yeah, yeah.
Over in Africa, it was pay the person at the desk, and then they would cut you off, and they would tell you when you were going to lose your connection, because that's how you stayed connected to our kids. So I suspect it was pay somebody, not coins.
Yeah.
That would have been later.
26. Yes?
You want 27?
Oh, all right.
July 24th, 1947, Blake Arbo. The marriage of Ida Louise Arbo, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Carol Arbo of Cumberland, to Donald Lewis Blake, son of Mr. and Mrs. Morris P. Blake of West Falmouth, took place at a candlelight service in the West Falmouth Baptist Church Saturday evening. The bride was dressed in a white satin gown with a train and a fingertip veil made by her mother. Mrs. Henry King of Bangor, sister of the bride, was matron of honor with Elizabeth Arbo and Marilyn Saskin's bridesmaids. Their gowns were blue and yellow nylon. Richard Kasparius acted as best man with Frank Wilson and Marshall Wagner as ushers. The church was decorated with flowers and evergreens.
That was 27. This is the last one? 28. September 18th, 1947. Please notice, in capitals, with an exclamation point, the Dowlings will open their store from 8 a.m. to 12 noon Sunday. There will be no afternoon hours. Okay. Was that after, means before you, right?
One more.
Yes.
Kelly, I didn't get a number.
I know,
Oh,
but he didn't get a number, but he would like to speak with us about some interesting notes from the papers.
yes, military items from Otisfield. There are a number of them. June 7th, 1945, Charles Butler, gunner master, 3rd class, writes his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Butler, that the ship which he had been assigned has entertained King George VI. It has been in campaigns in Africa, Sicily, Italy, and France, has been shot full of holes, but is now reconditioned and ready for service. Her mascot is a stuffed stork. That was my Uncle Charles. Spurs Corner, Maine. Mr. and Mrs. George Chelsea are at home. Mr. Chelsea was in the European area and has recently received an honorable discharge. I never knew the Chelsea.
Did anybody?
Chesley, this is the Chesley. George Chesley.
Chesley? Okay. Where do they live? They're in Spurs Corner?
Yeah.
Okay. December 20th, 1945. Must have been a lot of soldiers home. They all had the same date. Spurs Corner. Seaman Harry Cross and wife visited their parents, Mr. and Mrs. William Ash, on Tuesday. Seaman Cross is on leave.
You know that Ashes? You remember?
Mark and Janet Cotton live in her house.
Oh.
Where the Cottons live now.
Yeah.
Okay, I can remember some Ashes in town, so. Was he local also? Or just his wife, Ash?
He was the Ash.
He was the Ash.
Okay. December 20th, 1945, we've heard about this guy before. Ralph Lamb has received an honorable discharge from the Army. He arrived home from Germany Tuesday evening, but that's a different Ralph Lamb. The other Ralph Lamb, from whom my family bought their property, was in the First World War.
They lived where
What's that?
Chris Kelly, they lived where Chris Kelly lives.
It's a familiar name to me. December 20th, 1945, Sulu Hulkinen received his discharge and arrived home Tuesday. You can see the war is ended. He served in Italy and came home on the aircraft carrier Wasp. He landed in Virginia on the 27th. He is visiting his parents in East Oxford. December 26, 1945, mail from Lawrence Fortier tells us he received his first mail December 14th. He left the U.S. September 1st and is stationed in Japan. He says, it's sure great to get mail from home.
With a long haul.
Yes, it is, but here's what's interesting. He got his first mail on December 14th, and by December 26th, his parents had a response. Pretty impressive. Robert Butler, another uncle of mine, Signal, second class, cabled Christmas greetings to his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Joseph Butler from Wake Island. Now, when you were in the military during the war, you couldn't work, okay? And so my uncles, when they came home on leave or whatever, gave my grandparents a map, and each country had a woman's name. Susie was England, Francis was France, and so was Russia. And so they'd end their letter by saying, "Give my love to Susie." And they knew where they were. Here it was in Wake Island. Something my uncle told me about Wake Island was that the jungle was full of Japanese soldiers who didn't know the war was over. And they would try to convince them that the war was over, give up, you'll go home, all is well. And they thought this was a lie. And he said he himself had to shoot a number of Japanese soldiers who didn't have to die.